We are Eliza
Lori,
and Brenna,
and this is Crime Feast.
Each week we serve up a platter of murders,
mayhem, missing persons, tragedies, and more.
Feast on notorious tales,
ripped from today's headlines,
and resurrected from the past.
Hi, Crime Feasters. I'm Lori, and I'm serving up today's crime with Eliza and Brenna. They're here to help me dissect the details.
Can't wait for this
one.
I'm excited.
So today's episode includes a beloved murdered chef that was at the Oregon Culinary Institute, where he taught classes, a wife with a blank memory, and an overabundance of insurance policies.
Uh-oh.
Intriguing.
So today this is about the murder of Dan Brophy and then the trial of his wife, Nancy Crampton Brophy. So why I chose this case is because she's a romance author.
What?
And the three of us have all written romance novels, so I thought this was a great way to break us in and seem kind of relevant. And I thought we had a different perspective on this that most people wouldn't have.
That's true.
Yeah. So I'm going to start off by reading just a little snippet from her author bio. It says, I live in the beautiful, green, and very wet Northwest, married to a chef whose mantra is, life is a science project. As a result, there are chickens and turkeys in my backyard, a fabulous vegetable garden, which also grows tobacco for an insecticide, and a hot meal on the table every night. For those of you who have longed for this, let me caution you. The old adage is true. Be careful what you wish for. When the gods are truly angry, they grant us our wishes.
That's kind of a weird ending to that.
Okay. Is that foreshadowing?
Yeah.
Okay, lady.
So there's a bit more. And the payment is always high.
What?
Oh, gosh.
Fight an insidious...
What?
Yeah, I fight an insidious 10 pounds every year of my life. I can't tell you when I fell in love with my husband, but I relate the moment I decided to marry him. I was in a bath. It was a big tub. I expected him to join me, and when he was delayed, I called out, "Are you coming?" His answer convinced me he was Mr. Right. Yes, but I'm making hors d'oeuvres. Can you imagine spending the rest of your life with a man like that?
Or the rest of his life.
Yeah.
And let's just say how odd that is for like an author bio too. We should say.
Yeah.
So it actually later on during the trial, she does say, I was listening to different snippets of the trial, that she has not prepared a meal in 25 years. Can you imagine? I mean, how...
No.
She was totally pampered by this guy. He cooked for her. There were times where he would go out and get her a Starbucks coffee every morning and bring it to her. That was just like their routine. It was really kind of odd. I don't know. I mean, my husband does nice things for me, but I don't think I'd send him out to Starbucks every day to bring something back.
I would appreciate if my husband went out to Starbucks on a daily basis and brought it back to me. I would really enjoy that.
I would too, but we would go broke.
Yeah, it's so expensive. And
but you will hear.
Can we just say that if she ends up going to jail, she won't have to make a meal?
That's true. She'll have 3, but she doesn't have to pay for.
Oh my god, she's probably the longest time somebody can go without cooking for themselves. That's got to be a record, though.
Yeah, I
literally, because
25 years. I mean, you have to make something.
To get me a sandwich for my cereal.
Crazy.
All
right.
So a little bit on the background of Nancy Crampton. That's her pre-married name. She was born in Wichita Falls, Texas. She married her first husband in 1977. He was a police officer, and she had an agreement with him that he wouldn't store his gun collection in the home because at the time she was afraid of guns. Yeah. That marriage didn't last long, and when it was over, she wanted to take a year off, so she moved to Oregon and began taking culinary classes.
Okay.
And that was the last time she made a meal in culinary
Yes.
class.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I don't think I put this in my notes, but later on we'll talk about she starts a catering business, and during the trial, she is quoting her husband and saying something about her not being a cook because somebody said, well, how does your wife not cook if she runs a catering business? He said, oh no, she runs the operation. She tells other people what to do. She doesn't cook.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
But once she got to the Culinary Institute, she met Dan Brophy. He was a much revered chef. He raised chickens and grew spices, and he sold at the school on the weekends. And he was known for taking students foraging for mushrooms. By all accounts, he was a tough but caring instructor. Nancy met Dan after taking a cooking class. They struck up a friendship. He was married at the time, but was soon divorced, and they started seeing more of each other. They appeared to be a perfect couple, and their relationship grew. By 1999, they had a very large wedding reception and purchased their first home in southern Portland in an area called Beaverton. They never had any children together, but Dan had a son from his first wife. Their relationship was strained, but as Nathaniel, which was the son, grew older, they became reacquainted. Nancy and Dan did seem to balance each other out. She was the orderly planner, and he was the chaotic doer. Dan referred to Nancy as the management, which, I mean, you would think it's kind of a tough term. So going through this whole case, I tried to keep an open mind because the trial just ended. And I wanted to see, what really made her the way she was and what I did relate to and what I didn't. And while her being called the management seems really tough, in my family, my dad and my dad's brothers all called their wives the boss. And it wasn't meant as a term like, oh, you're bossy. It means, oh, I've got to check with her because it was kind of like a loving thing. Like, I've got to make sure she's okay with it. And not in she's going to be angry with
fire you.
Yeah. So while some people might take him calling her the management really poorly, I think it could be something kind of sweet sometimes. But by all appearances, they were happy and the marriage seemed stable.
The first time I used Instacart was with my sister. We were baking cookies and I'd forgotten the butter. Instacart to the rescue. Now I even use it when we're on vacation, so our staples are delivered right to our door. Save yourself that trip to the market. Instacart delivers groceries in as fast as 1 hour. They connect you with personal shoppers in your area to shop and deliver groceries from your favorite stores. Follow the link in our show notes, and that lets Instacart know we sent you and help support our show. Plus, you'll get free delivery on your first order over $35. There's multiple stores available in most areas. Shop all your favorites on a single order. The products you love from local stores. Hand-selected by shoppers based on your preferences. Delivery to your door in as fast as 1 hour. Instacart highlights deals to help you save money. Find everything you usually buy and get smart suggestions for new items. They pick the freshest produce and keep your eggs safe too. Let Instacart shop for you.
While Dan always had position in the culinary arts working at schools, Nancy was more of a self-starter and possibly a little bit of a loner because she was always self-employed. She never worked for anybody else. She started that catering business in the 1990s sometimes, and at some point she was making upwards of $500,000 a year.
Holy crap.
So Yeah, she was really raking it in.
Yeah, she was.
Ordering people to make food and
Right.
deliver it.
She was good at the management position.
Yeah.
Dang,
But-
that's a lot for catering too. I would
Yeah.
think. Wow.
Yeah, shortly after 9/11, the catering business kind of fell off because people weren't hosting events anymore. And, I guess I never really thought people were worried about having events after 9/11. I knew about flying, but
Yeah.
it kind of makes sense that, business could have died off then. So when she sold off the company, she shifted into selling insurance. And
That is a big shift.
she claims she really did not like the business. But I mean, it was like all kinds of insurance,
Like,
casualty.
came in
Life
handy
insurance.
later.
Yeah, lots.
Mm-hmm.
Selling life insurance did come in handy later for her. But on the side in 2011, Nancy began publishing romance novels. They were mostly romantic suspense, and she has several books. Let's see, they're titled The Wrong Cop, which, who knows, maybe she was writing about
Her first husband.
her previous husband.
Yeah.
Yeah, she had one book called The Wrong Seal, about Navy SEAL. She had one called The Wrong Husband.
What?
Okay, so I have to say, though, her marketing is kind of brilliant because her tagline for the series is "Wrong never felt so
Okay,
right."
that is a
Oh,
good
no.
tagline, though. That is good branding.
Oh, that is a good one.
So yeah, that's what I think. I mean, some things she did were just brilliant.
Yeah,
but who
very
knows?
clever.
Maybe she's got a devious mind back in the back, and we'll get into that a little bit more. Even though she seems like this little grandma,
Mhm.
she was
gosh.
up on the stand, and she had to put in special earbuds to be able to hear people speaking. And yeah, she's in her 70s. I
Oh,
think.
wow.
I didn't write down her age, but in 2016. The pair began having financial troubles. So obviously she was not raking in $500K every year anymore. Selling insurance is kind of tough. It's the cold calling and finding clients. But there's also, I mean, you guys know, writing books is a tough business. And, even though she started out pretty early in self-publishing, she wasn't making a lot of money.
Yeah.
They had a $1,500 a month mortgage on their house. They drained Dan's 401k account of $35,000 and took a $5,000 loan to catch up on insurance policies.
That's what you take the loan
What?
for?
Miscellaneous,
Nice.
No,
yeah,
that's
miscellaneous
crazy.
home renovations and caretaking of their home. To top it off, Nancy spent $1,500 on guns
What?
and gun parts.
What? The woman who hated
Yeah.
guns.
With her first husband's like, don't keep
That's a
the
lot
gun
of
in
money,
the
too.
house. Yeah.
But let me just go spend so much money on guns. What?
Yeah, there's a lot of transition in her life.
It sounds like she went from making $500,000 a year to needing to borrow money
But not to pay bills. She borrows it to pay on the insurance
just
policy.
to pay the insurance.
Yeah.
Weird.
So speaking of that, they were spending $800 a month
What?
on life insurance
What?
policies. $800 a month.
That's
so
ridiculous.
very disproportionate
Yeah.
to
Crazy
their other
amount to pay in
expenses.
insurance.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also, crazy for the age that they were, because they weren't going to have any children that needed the support, because, I mean, a lot of times when you do life insurance, you do it so that your children will be cared for, and
Right.
they didn't have that. It was just them.
And if they had just saved that money instead, it would have paid for like any funeral expenses, which is the other reason why people
Right.
usually get life insurance to pay for the costs, so it doesn't like upset
Yeah.
the family.
So
when
it's
they're
not
gone
like
or
they were in
something.
their 30s, right? And they have these high-powered jobs, and if like one of them happens to pass away, then you're stuck with raising the kids and doing all this stuff, and you need all that
Right.
money. I mean, they're both up there in age, so
That's so much money to be spending. Like you're talking like almost $10,000 a year on insurance. That is
Yeah, it's like half of their
crazy.
mortgage payment.
Yeah.
It's
crazy.
crazy. Absolutely crazy.
Wow.
They had a pattern of overspending. She said on trial that she was not a saver, which is, I mean, I find kind of odd. I mean, I understand that she may have had impulse issues, but she also was really savvy when it came to numbers. And I may say this later on, I can't remember, but she has her degree in economics. So it's not like she didn't understand finance. I don't know why she was overspending.
Yeah, and she had a lucrative business before. You don't get a lucrative business like that if you don't know how to handle the finances.
Mm-hmm. I also read somewhere that they had borrowed $50,000 from Dan's father, but I cannot remember where I found that. Their financial difficulties continued to increase, and they began looking into selling their home and moving to a smaller one. Part of the thing they wanted to do, one of their neighbors had subdivided their home and sold it off in parts. They wanted to do this as well, but the problem was, they'd lived in this house many years, and over that time, Dan, being the chef and the naturalist that he was, had made these massive gardens and different things in the backyard, and some of it involved planting pots in the ground and growing things in the pots. So, and they had blackberry bushes everywhere, and it was just a tangled mess back there. And in order to get the house ready to sell, they had to clean up the backyard. It was in such bad shape that they needed to bring in a landscaper to do it, like thousands of dollars worth of work. And in order to subdivide their home, they were going to have to knock out a garage too. So they were trying to figure out what to do there, and they were in the middle of having all this yard work done and their financial difficulties. They hired the landscaper in November or December of 2017. But at that time of the year, they couldn't get the heavy equipment into the backyard. They needed a ditch witch, like excavator type stuff to clean up the crazy messed up yard. So here's where it gets interesting, and the loving couple stuff. I mean, they seem like a loving couple throughout this. So a lot of her explanations kind of make sense, but later on, when it's all put together, there's so much circumstantial evidence.
Yeah.
So on November 27th of 2017, Nancy visited a ghost gun website. So a ghost gun is a gun that you can build.
What?
It's not like a gun that's already put together. She visited it another time, and then finally on Christmas Eve, while Dan was still at work, she purchased a Glock 19. It was delivered in January. They eventually find this in a storage unit. She didn't give it to the cops right away. But she claims that this was for research for a book.
We all have very, very scary
I kind of believe her,
histories.
Yes. So, Brenna, you have a sword, right?
I have 2 swords in my office. Yep.
I also have a sword and an axe.
So there, you know what? We do make these purchases.
Yes.
That's why I'm like, you know what? We can kind of relate to some of this. This is not completely far-fetched that she would want to purchase it, figure out how it was done. I mean, it's a lot of money, and it's not as cool as a sword, and for somebody that said they don't like guns, why would you do that? But then again, okay, I can cut her some slack on it. Because, research.
Right.
Hello, listeners. This is Lori, and I'm here to tell you that podcasting isn't hard when you have the right partners. We use Buzzsprout, and it's hands down the easiest and best way to launch, promote, and track your podcast. Your show can be online and listed in all the major podcast directories within minutes of finishing your recording. You'll get a great-looking podcast website, detailed analytics, and more. Following the link in our show notes lets Buzzsprout know that we sent you. Get you a $20 Amazon gift card if you sign up for a paid plan, and help support our show. Join over 100,000 podcasters already using Buzzsprout to get their message out to the world. The team at Buzzsprout is passionate about helping you succeed. Then in late January of 2018, she started doing more research on Glocks and whether or not they had a kickback. So,
Still plausible.
research.
Yeah, I can find that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Research, because she does write, the kind of military style suspense thrillers.
Right.
But at this time, when she was looking at this gun, she claimed that it was for self-defense,
Oh.
not for research. So she had already bought the other gun for research. This one, she said, was for self-defense because there had recently been a high school shooting in Florida. She convinced her husband, Dan, to let her buy the gun and some miscellaneous parts from a local gun show. She spent over $600 in cash. It was a cash purchase.
Wow. For someone who's having money problems, and
Somebody
also,
that doesn't like guns.
they don't live in Florida,
Yeah, they
right?
don't live in Florida. They're up in Oregon, right?
Or work in a school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she claimed to be anti-gun all of her life
Yeah.
She
until this last year of until she wasn't. So, on January 17th, again while Dan was at work, she went to the gun show and she completed the purchase of the gun. And this time it was a complete gun. It wasn't a kit that you have to put the gun together. It was a gun ready to shoot and fire.
Ooh.
So she didn't have to put it together. Made it much easier for her. Yeah, she thought this gun would be easier to manage than the Glock 19 that was in storage. It had less of a kickback. Then at some point she says she became obsessed with guns.
Just
That's
seems
weird.
odd,
And-
right? You go from hating
She-
guns to suddenly
Yeah.
I'm obsessed with them. It just seems
Right.
seems like a step.
That seems really strange. Yeah, we're missing something.
After she brought the gun home, she and Dan sat at the kitchen table and examined it.
Together.
Right away, Dan said he would not take it mushroom foraging with him because she had told him, "Oh, I'm concerned about you being out in the woods and something happening to you." So he's like, "No, I'm not taking."
There
that
are a
with
lot
me."
of shooters
And
out in the
he
forest foraging for mushrooms.
well, apparently, yeah, I didn't know this, but it's very competitive to forage for
Oh
mushrooms.
my god. To the death.
Yeah, that came out. Who knew?
Yeah, I had no idea.
People can be very territorial.
That's my fungi. Oh.
Yeah. So anyway, he wanted her to get rid of it. He wanted her to sell it right away. But instead of doing that, on February 17th, she set up an eBay account and started looking for a Glock 17
What?
slide and barrel.
Wait, what?
So he tells her that he's not going to use.
I'm not getting rid of the gun. I'm looking for more.
He tells her he's not going to use the gun, and she's like, "Okay, so I'll just go buy more. Eventually, I'll find one he'll want."
Yeah. So technically, this is not a complete new gun. It's just the top of the gun that you see people can cock, and that whole part on top comes off, and it can be replaced with a different one. And if you do that, the markings on a bullet when they're fired look different.
Right.
So you can put in the new slide and barrel, and whatever you shoot from it will look different from what you shoot from a gun you haven't tampered with.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's sort of
So,
creepy.
to make it look like,
Yeah.
no, I didn't shoot him with this gun. Look, the bullet
No,
striations
not the
don't
murder weapon
match.
at all.
Mm-hmm. So the ghost gun kit arrived at her home on February 28th. Then we fast forward to May. We're on May 25th, and Dan was getting ready for work, or I don't know what he was doing, but he was taking a shower, and he did something and broke the glass door on their shower, and he had cuts on his hands and
That sounds terrible.
on his feet. She had to take him to the hospital, and and I'm going to say a lot of kind of random things here, but it goes to her reasoning to why things were a little chaotic for her. She was taking care of that with him. She had, right around the same time, she got a letter from an agent, which, I mean, we can understand this. She got a letter from an agent requesting to see her manuscript. I guess she'd submitted for this series she had about witches. And she had already written book 1. She had already written book 2. She was working on book 3. And this agent sent her a request. So she was stressed out about getting the first 2 books edited and finishing the other one and getting off to it. And, you know, on trial, it doesn't really come off how big of a stressful time that is. Because I don't think she does a good job of defending herself on the stand. But that is a hell of a lot of stress for somebody to be going through that. And part of this goes to her mind was stuck in her stories. She was completely immersed in trying to make these work.
I can understand that. We know how that feels.
And this goes into part of her defense. And I mean, I totally get it.
Yeah.
So was she still writing the romantic suspense at the time she was writing The Witches?
You know, she doesn't say it during trial. But I'm assuming she had to have put it on hold. I was trying to puzzle that out myself, because was she writing these witches when she did all the gun purchases? Because that's like a completely different thing.
Oh, yeah.
If you're in the witch head versus a suspense. Yeah.
Suspense head. Yeah, that's true.
I mean, the witches could be foraging for mushrooms in the forest. But they would not protect themselves with a gun while they're doing it.
Yeah, they would just use their, like, special powers. That's true.
Hey, crime feasters. Lori here. We're interrupting this case to let you know that Eliza and I host another weekly podcast.
We admit to an extreme love of history, books, and wine, and we couldn't help but share our obsession with everyone else.
And so we created a place where we could talk about all 3 of those things at once.
Join us, and sometimes our guests, weekly for happy hour chats about books, fascinating historical tidbits, and what we're drinking.
Episodes this season include genealogy, naughty princesses, haunted history, scandals, and so much more.
Thank you for letting us share, and we hope to raise a glass to books and the past with you. Now, back to your feast.
I'm going to sneak in here, because I can't remember if I've got it in my notes to mention later, that she would occasionally go to a Starbucks to write, and that Starbucks was close to the Culinary Institute where Dan worked. And there was one morning, a couple of weeks before he was murdered, where she went in to write early and then stopped by the Institute at approximately 7:30 a.m. in the morning to use the restroom. So that's a time when nobody else is there, and Dan let her in the building. So it was just her and Dan.
Kind of odd, though, because like if she was writing at a Starbucks, they have a bathroom there.
Just go to the bathroom.
Yeah. So I just want to mention that, and I might bring it back up again later. Yes. So we're going to go forward to June 1st of 2018. And this is, she's still got all the witches on her brain. She's trying to figure out, she's staying up late at night trying to figure out how to make witches bend light. Because I guess she had some kind of scene in a tunnel where she had to have them do something. And that's one of her reasons for not getting any sleep that night. And there was a leak in their bathroom sink. And I have no idea why she kept bringing this up, because it doesn't seem relevant other than it gives her something to talk about that happened that morning. There were towels under the sink. She took them out and threw the wet towels in the sink. And Dan got up in the morning and he's like, "Why are these towels in the sink?" And I don't know if that set her off. Maybe it did.
I mean, the fact that she keeps bringing it up, maybe. He just kept asking
Oh,
about the towels.
But I think it was the prosecutor that brought up, you know what, maybe you're just bringing up something so that you have kind of an alibi or something that's different about that morning that you can talk about.
Yeah.
Because we'll see in a little while, she didn't talk about much else in the next hour and a half at first. Yeah, so that goes into, she typically got Starbucks every day. She would get up, she would leave her nightshirt on, she would throw on her tights and flip-flops. She would go get her Starbucks if Dan was not going to get it for her. then come back home. And this is what she remembers. She does not remember going to Starbucks that morning. She remembers the towels in the sink. She remembers getting dressed. The next thing she remembers is having a phone call from a friend saying, something's going on down at the Culinary Institute. You better get Dan on the phone. So what they're saying is she has something called retrograde amnesia of the time period when her
Very
husband
convenient.
died. So on the morning of June 2nd, 2018, after Dan makes it to the school for work, he disables the alarm, enters the building, opens up a loading bay, and takes out the miscellaneous herbs and cooking accoutrements that he takes in and sells to his students. And he began to prepare for the class for the day. Moments later, he's at the sink, his back turned to the kitchen. He's filling ice and water buckets because they've got some kind of exercise called a live fire drill during the class. It was too technical for me, but it involves cooking, which obviously Nancy probably didn't understand either. I mean, she understood it from his point of view, but she never did it.
Yeah.
So while he's standing at the sink, he is shot 2 times.
What?
Once in the chest in his back, and then another time in the chest. And I could never decipher if the second shot in the chest was from the back or the front, but he was shot twice. His body is not found until sometime later when the students begin to arrive for class. His keys and wallet, containing $77, were lying on a cart nearby in the kitchen, so there was no robbery involved. And then obviously it's a very tragic story. A lot of the students are traumatized. A couple of them testified during the trial. And the community and her mother-in-law and father-in-law all rally around Nancy and they grieve together. And now's the time that I want to bring up something that they didn't allow in court.
Ooh, a little snippet.
Yeah.
A little tidbit.
Yes. So this is something that Nancy wrote. It's a blog post that she
I've
wrote
heard about
several
this one.
years
Yes.
earlier.
I have not. Ooh.
The blog post was titled "How to Murder Your Husband."
Oh my god.
Why? Why
Yeah.
did she do that?
That's fantastic.
All right, so the opening from that blog post is, as a romantic suspense writer, I spend a lot of time thinking about murder and consequently about police procedure. After all, if murder is supposed to set me free, I certainly don't want to spend any time in jail. And let me say clearly for the record, I don't like jumpsuits, and orange isn't my color.
Oh my god.
So ominous.
That's just the beginning. Then she goes into 5 motives for committing a murder. Murdering your husband.
Oh my god.
1 is financial. 2 is lying, cheating bastard. 3 is falling in love with someone else. 4 is abuser. And 5, it's your profession. So, like a hit woman. So I do have another snippet from her blog post, but I'm going to save that for next week's episode. I'm also going to end on this note. On September 5th, 2018, she was arrested, and Nancy said, "Oh, you must think I killed my husband."
Who
Oh,
says
God.
that?
No, why would you say that?
As a matter of fact, yes,
Whoops.
we do.
But don't read my blog. If I were you, don't check my internet history either.
So I'm excited
Wow.
to finish telling you guys the
I
story.
can't wait.
I cannot wait
Yes,
for next
that
week.
is going to be fun.
Thank you.
Thank you, Crime Feasters, for listening to our show.
Source material about today's case can be found in our show notes.
To keep updated on the podcast, follow us on Instagram at Crime Feast Podcast.
Facebook at Crime Feast Podcast.
Or Twitter at Crime Feast.
If you have a story you want shared on a Mini Bites episode,
Please email us at crimefeastpodcast@gmail.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the show wherever you download your podcast. That way you're notified every time a new episode is live. Also, if you've enjoyed the episodes, we'd love for you to leave us a review. Subscribes and reviews help us get noticed.
Until next week.
stay safe out there. We don't want you on the menu next.